Welcome back to Square Off. Democratic Congressman Raul Grijalva of Tucson was asked many years ago how he wanted to be remembered. He told the interviewer, "I hope people know that I never gave up." Grijalva died this past week at the age of 77 from complications of cancer. During a half-century of public service, the progressive champion never gave up on the causes that mattered to him and to Southern Arizona. Here's our remembrance. Democratic Congressman Raul Grijalva was an old-school progressive, rooted in his community, not afraid to mix it up.
I came of age admiring Democrats who fought for civil rights, for women's rights, for clean air, clean water, and for peace.
That's how Grijalva introduced himself at the 2016 Democratic National Convention. He endorsed Hillary Clinton for president after the primaries were over. Grijalva's first choice was the progressives' champion, Senator Bernie Sanders.
At some point, some of the corporate interests in this state have to have the courage to stand up and say this law is bad.
Grijalva made national news in 2010 by calling for an economic boycott of his home state after the passage of SB 1070, the so-called Show Me Your Papers law, targeted undocumented immigrants. The boycott ended after Grijalva conceded it wasn't changing any minds.
I'll be quite honest with you, Rich. I just don't think that there's going to be that kind of effect on the leadership of this state on this issue.
Raul Grijalva was the son of a bracero, a guest worker who emigrated from Mexico to Tucson. Grijalva was born there and would serve his community for 51 years on the Tucson City Council, Pima County Board, and in Congress.
Preserving these lands is good not only for Arizona, but for the planet.
The capstone of Grijalva's half-century career was President Joe Biden's creation in August 2023 of a new national monument for historic tribal land around the Grand Canyon. Grijalva had pushed the federal government for nearly a decade to protect the land. It married his concern for the environment with advocacy for indigenous people. Grijalva revealed in April 2024 that he'd been diagnosed with lung cancer. He ran for and won a 12th term in Congress in November, but Grijalva vowed it would be his final term. So how will Congressman Grijalva's seat be filled? Under Arizona law, Governor Katie Hobbs will have to schedule the dates for a special primary and general election within 3 days after the seat is declared vacant. The election timing is also set by law. It's likely the primary will be in July or August. The general election could be as late as October. The majority Latino district is a safe Democratic seat. And joining us now with their memories of Raul Grijalva are Joe Garcia, Vice President at Chicanos Por La Causa, who covered Raul Grijalva as a Tucson reporter back in the day, and Luis Heredia, State Director for Arizona Senator Mark Kelly. He worked on the first of Grijalva's 12 campaigns for Congress. Welcome to Square Off. Raul Grijalva was one of our longest-serving members of Congress, and yet up here, Maricopa County, the state's largest county, he wasn't that well known. Joe, I'll start with you. What do folks here need to know to understand Raul Grijalva and who he was?
Well, I think he was a stay-at-home kind of guy. In fact, when he first got elected, one of his reservations about that was that he was going to have to leave Tucson a lot to go to Washington, D.C. and represent Southern Arizona. But he was a very down-to-earth guy, a very everyday kind of guy. What you see is what you get. He was not a politician. That is not to say he wasn't very astute at politics, as he was, but he didn't have to be calculating. He just had to be genuine, and that he was always.
Luis, same question for you. What do we need to know to really understand him?
You know, the congressman's legacy is really connected to the land and the people of the Sonoran Desert and our state of Arizona. I think he had a legacy of being authentic, fighting for the issues that really matter to people like my parents that, you know, wake up at sunrise and at work at sunset. You really have to appreciate his authenticity and the clarity that he had in his words. Oftentimes he would walk into rooms and really ground that room with just his presence, but also the words of like, this fight is worth it.
It seemed he could be underestimated, but he was very sophisticated.
You know,
as a politician.
The congressman was really rooted in making sure that values were understood. So when he talked, it was an ability that it was a life story of him fighting in the school boards in Tucson Unified, him being a supervisor in Pima County, and then being elected in a very tough primary in 2002, that he was really, really effective at connecting to people.
And Joe, you covered Congressman Grijalva when he was on the Pima County Board, Tucson City Council as well. How did that shape him?
Yeah, the Tucson School District. But yeah, he was always who he was. He really hasn't changed much over the years. He had not. Certainly, again, it was who he was. There's no shortage of representatives, of elected officials, especially in Congress, when it comes to representing the business community or corporate America. That's not who he was. Everybody knew when he was going, he was representing tribes, he was representing the environment, he was representing underserved communities, he's representing the working class, he's representing immigrant population. Everybody knew he was representing when he walked in. So he didn't have that burden, if you will, of trying to speak out of both sides of his mouth. You knew what he was saying. He was speaking from the truth, which was from experience and from the neighbors that he worked with and knew so well. The community knew him. He didn't have to fight for name brand. They knew him.
Yeah. Do you think that held him back in Congress? He wasn't about the money. He wanted nothing to do with big corporations. It took him a while to become a committee chair, Committee of Natural Resources. Do you think his personality, just who he was, held him back?
Well, I think, again, back to his legacy was really working through the system, through the committee structure, through the Democratic Party. He was chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus for a very long time, and he earned the respect to get to be the chair of the Natural Resources Committee, where his legacy was about protecting the Grand Canyon. His legacy was protecting the beauty of the Sonoran Desert, the beauty of the lands that surround us for future generations. You know, one thing that we want to say is that the congressman, when he walked into the room, he would go straight to the abuelita sitting on the table to really connect, provide a laugh. He was excellent in just that type of humor that is really rare, but it was about connecting to people. And he had a saying that I have to say, it was all about the love. It was all about the love that he had for, again, the people and the land in the state.
All right, connecting to the people. Joe Garcia, Luis Heredia, thanks so much for joining us.